Welcome to the Capital News. I'm your host, Alex Koritis. Today is Tuesday, November 10th, 2020. Thank you so much for joining me. Title of today's podcast, The State of Our Union. Of course, there's a lot of news stories we could cover today, but I really don't want to discuss them. I really just want to talk about the state of our current union. Of course, I will talk about some of the things that are going on out in the news cycle, just sort of as it relates to our current state of affairs, what it means now, and what's likely going to come down the pike, or at least some scenarios of what we may witness over the remainder of 2020 and what we're likely, going to see throughout 2021. As I have been stating here for quite a while, we ain't seen nothing yet. The political drama and saga is going to continue well through the end of this year and throughout next year, and probably quite a bit longer than that in one potential scenario we're going to discuss. The economic and financial destruction and decay is far from over. I don't care how many trillions of dollars you print out of thin air, it's only going to get us so far. And free was never so expensive, as we discussed months ago and was the title of one of our podcasts, discussing that very point. It's one hit after the next. This is information overload in the information era. And we're going to cover, I hope, quite a few things. I have no idea, to be perfectly honest with you, how long this podcast is going to go. Perhaps it'll be our typical half hour, maybe a lot longer, maybe shorter. This is more or less off the top of my head. Most of these podcasts are. I write down a handful of bullet points and just get to talking. But really, all I have written down is the title and just a couple of things to cover. Obviously, market performance, we'll get that out of the way here first. Talk about some of the political and election autopsy, which is going to be taking place. I think there's still a lot of political pundits and analysts still diagnosing 2016. I think 2016 was rather easy to understand. As we were discussing before this election, 2020 is not 2016. Joe Biden is not Hillary Clinton. And there's just a lot of differences between 2020 and 2016 with respect to those candidates in the race. But nonetheless, these politicians have to get their act together, and of course they're not going to. They're never going to do any type of self-reflection. It's always just going to be about more money, more power, and blaming the other side. So none of the structural issues are going to be addressed. This is completely a political power grab, which is what it has been, which is one of the main reasons that we continue to witness the political, social, and economic decay, and I would again argue even moral decay across this country and several others around the world as well. So that's par for the course. That's not going to end anytime soon. With the Senate still up for grabs, with the runoff basically coming down to that runoff in the Senate in the state of Georgia, nobody's going to give up. Nobody is going to give in. Nobody is going to concede much of anything. It's going to take at least till that moment for some of the temperature to maybe come down a little bit, to start to cool off. Although, let's not be naive and let's not be downright stupid either in believing that just because Joe Biden is the president-elect and because he's going to go out there and perhaps deliver a speech and make remarks like he has been of trying to be a uniter and not a divider, that's only going to get us so far. I hate to tell you. I hope he can get us far with that rhetoric. I hope people can really start to take a deep breath and understand there is a lot more that can unite us as opposed to what divides us. But I just don't think that that's going to take root. I really don't. The temperature's too hot. People are too upset. We have a president of the United States who is not conceding this race, wants to fight it to the very end. Look, if there is significant or substantial evidence that shows that there is voter fraud, massive voter fraud, which could actually overturn this election, meaning President Trump wins re-election, that's massive. That in and of itself is massive and destructive to this country. Do you understand what that means if that happens? That would mean that it was rigged. That would mean that it is fixed. Can you imagine what will happen if that proves to be the case? Because right now you basically, just to make the discussion and the argument easier, you basically have half the country believing that it was rigged, that it was fixed. And that if this goes through the proper channels in the courts and what have you, that the election will be overturned and President Trump will win re-election. And then you have half the country that believes that no, this was a duly elected president-elect with Joe Biden. That's it. Stop your whining. Okay? Now, if it's found that there was massive corruption, and it would be massive, this country is going to simply fall apart. Now, if there is massive corruption, don't misunderstand me, that needs to be identified. That needs to be discovered. That needs to be made public. You can't go run, hide because, there's a poor diagnosis or something bad happened or is about to happen. You can't go and do that stuff. You have to deal with it. As painful as it might be. And this will be excruciatingly painful for this country if that turns out to be the case. So for all of you out there who are still Trump supporters, and that's perfectly fine, and you think that it's rigged, and it happens that, yep, there was enough evidence, it got overturned, the president, do you understand that that's not the end of this story? Because what you are claiming is destructive. What you are claiming is devastating to the state of our union. So again, is this just, well, I don't care because I won? Well, if you win because you found out there was massive voter fraud, you understand what you're saying. Yes, it needs to be made public if that's the case. But this isn't going to be some sort of happy, joy dance you're going to be doing in the street here. Because it means that this country has been compromised. And for those of you who think that, of course, the president-elect is duly elected, and it comes to find that that's not the case, you think they're just going to pick up their toys and go home too? This is not going to be over anytime soon. And as I stated last week, it could very well prove that Donald Trump could be more powerful outside of the Oval Office than he is right now in the Oval Office. Because his supporters, his base, isn't going anywhere. A lot of Republicans aren't coming out, even acknowledging that Joe Biden is the president-elect. Keep the fight going. Don't concede, Mr. President. Keep going, keep going, keep going. As I've stated, they're not going to stand up to this guy. I said this months ago. Because they haven't been doing it for the past few years. Why would they do it now all of a sudden? They don't care. They don't care about you. They don't care about the country. They care about power. They care about maintaining their positions. That's it. They're concerned perhaps about some of them, of course, are going to be running in 2024, and they don't want to piss off the Trump base. They don't want to do it because they'll say, oh, well, they're going to remember this. They're going to remember that I said, Mr. President, do what's right by the country and concede this election. No, they're not going to do it because they want those votes. So Donald Trump, again, could be quite more powerful outside. And he's going to have a lot of arguments. And he could justify a lot of things. And he can convince his base of a lot of things, as he already perfectly well knows. He says jump, they're going to say, how high, sir? He knows this. And he can use this for himself and against them because he doesn't care. He can easily make the argument. And he has been doing so. So he has people conditioned on this already. He can tell them, look, folks, my 4 years of as the president were completely stolen. They were stolen from me. Right out of the gate. Russia, the Russian hoax. Impeachment. COVID-19. All of the other nonsense. I mean, he can make a list of grievances. That's what he does. Some of them correct to point out. So do you think if he should make that argument, do you think he's just going to go down to Florida and play golf? He's not going to go away. Sure, he'll go to Florida and play some rounds of golf, but that ain't going to be all he does. If he does not leave, if he doesn't concede, and if he does not leave graciously, I mean, I don't expect him to. But basically what that would flag to me, if he does not leave gracefully, is that he's going to say, you know what? The Democrats, the media, all these other people, all these enemies of him, they screwed me over for 4 years. Well, guess what? I'm not going away quietly. Now I'm going to screw the Biden administration and the quote-unquote system for the next 4 years. What's that mean? Well, I'm going to keep you in wait. I'm going to keep you with the TVTs. I'm not going to tell you every little detail. It's going to depend on the day, which is how he operates to begin with. So he can say, you stole my 4 years? Well, guess what? Sleepy Joe and Kamala, or whatever he wants to call her. I'm going to steal your 4 years. I'm going to have my people marching in the streets, because if I tell them to, they're going to. And who knows how nasty it could potentially get. Because somebody can misconstrue what Donald Trump might be saying, and some nut goes crazy, and that might be all it takes. Some vigilante wants to take it into his own hands. Stand back, stand down. Don't lie to yourself and think that, there's left-wing extremists and there are right-wing extremists in this country. And they're just waiting for the right opportunity, or they're just waiting for somebody to give them the go-ahead to justify what's going on. He wants to be the law and order president. Well, he can say, look, this election was stolen from us. It was stolen from us. That means there is no law and order. That means we have to be the law and order. We have to take it back. Now, what's that going to mean? How is somebody going to construe that? Somebody on the far right? Some type of militia? Just waiting for that type of call. What's going to happen? Now, I hope none of this craziness does happen. But I have predicted some other crazy things here that have come true. Didn't want those to happen either. I'm sure many of you thought, hey, Alex, you're saying all these riots and protests around the world. There's no way they're going to come here to the streets of the United States. Oh, well, they did. And I know a lot of you in the audience are on the same page with me and thought, yeah, that was very likely to happen, and you're not surprised that it happened, and you're not going to be surprised if this happens. But some of you will be. I'm not going to be surprised by this. This goes to the state of our union. This goes to the state of our division and divisiveness. Talked about this prior to the election as well. This is a repudiation election. Of course, there was going to be a winner at the end of the day. This is a divided country. It should be no surprise that we are going to get divided government. Or at least not, let's just call it, there was no massive blue wave, there was no massive red wave. This is divided government because the country is divided. Not too many people across this country were voting for Joe Biden, but a lot of people were voting for Donald Trump, and a lot of people were voting against Donald Trump. Because not only was this a repudiation election, but it was a referendum, of course, on Donald Trump. And again, you could almost say that's the same thing. But it was a repudiation of both sides. And that's what these idiots aren't going to come to realize, because there's not going to be any type of self-reflection. Now, they might realize it, but they'll never admit it. Not to the public. They'll never sit down as adults to try to get something done. It's not going to happen. Nancy Pelosi isn't going to come out and admit, oh, well, there wasn't a blue wave. Maybe that means the country, maybe they don't like what we're talking about. She's not going to admit that. Not going to admit that. Just like Mitch McConnell isn't going to say, oh, well, there wasn't a red wave. Well, maybe that means people don't like what we're talking about either. There's not going to be any of that self-reflection. These people don't care about you. They care about themselves. They care about their buddies that they can enrich, how they can enrich themselves. That's it. They want the money. They got the power. They want more money. They want more power. Rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. How many times do I have to say it? How much more destruction and chaos and decay do you need to see before you wake up to this fact that is right in front of your eyes? But all they have to do, put out some talking points, whisper those sweet nothing words in your ears, and you're right back to them. That's all it is. It's an abusive relationship. Like I said, you want to be president? All you got to do is rehearse 500 words. Either side, there's 500 words for the Republicans, 500 words for the Democrats. Put them together, get fancy with it, charismatic smile, have a little humor. Boom, presto. You'll be behind the Resolute desk too. That's all you got to do. Divide and conquer works so well for these people. Stay focused on the big issues. But that's part of the election autopsy here. There's not going to be any self-reflection. They're going to fight for power like never before. How vicious will the Republicans be against Joe Biden obviously remains to be seen. But right now, they're sticking with Donald Trump, most of them. Don't concede, fight it, whatever. Because they don't want to irritate the base. A lot of them have 2024 aspects of running for president. Don't want to piss these people off. Just don't want to do it. Doesn't matter. Again, it's all about winning. All about winning at the expense of the country. Does not matter. That's why these parties have got to go. Everybody means everybody. I mean, you could even have just some of the leadership might be enough. Might really send a message that we have to get this country back together, on track, something that makes sense. And a way that could possibly be done is if Crazy Nancy resigned, if Mitch McConnell resigned, if a lot of the leadership on both sides resigned and said, we've been here for a long time. We've done what we wanted to do. We understand that we're not very popular. And for the benefit and for the sake of this country, we're going to resign. That might really move the needle. Something like that might really move the needle. That there's some sort of self-sacrifice in here. But that ain't going to happen. So we're going to have to continue to deal with this. And it ain't going away anytime soon. And I'm going to say it again. We ain't seen the worst of it. Economically, you still have evictions waiting in the wings. You still have bankruptcies and insolvencies waiting in the wings. Survey after survey indicating about small businesses, if there was not another round of fiscal spending, that they were going to be laying people off, reducing their hours, or shutting their doors for good. Well, there is no other federal spending program. We know that the Federal Reserve is still not using any of those funds because the banks don't want them, don't want to use those funds to benefit or to assist Main Street. This isn't conspiratorial. This is from the mouth of the idiot himself, Jay Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve. He said this last week. Well, the banks don't want to give out this money because they don't like the fees that they're making from it, and then they're afraid that they're going to lose money because these small businesses have too much debt to begin with, and in the current environment, they're just not going to survive, so we're just not going to participate in these programs. Now, the Federal Reserve is their regulator. The Federal Reserve tells them to do it, they're going to do it. Furthermore, the federal government appropriated this money for the purpose, supposedly, of benefiting small businesses. So dictate to them what they do with this money. But they're not doing that, folks, and you know why? Because they don't care about you. That's why I call it the Nobody Cares Act. And don't you ever forget it. 96-0, say it with me, no votes for America. Podcast we did several months ago, just like free was never so expensive. We had a good run of podcasts during that time of the discussion, the debate, the passage, implementation of the Nobody Cares Act, and we're still talking about it. We're still talking about it because it was a multi-trillion-dollar monstrosity. That's the state of our union. They want you divided. They want us fighting amongst ourselves so they can run away with all the loot. Billions and trillions of dollars. And it's on TV. It's press conference after press conference. It's lecture after lecture. It's interview after interview. It's report after report. It's memo after memo. It's right in front of us. And people get upset because a Republican thinks this and a Democrat thinks that. It's exactly what they want. Get upset because people are protesting and rioting in the streets and they break some glass and they go steal some stuff. That's fine. It's perfectly fine to be upset about that. I don't like it. Hold them to account. May justice be served. But they're stealing, what, $5,000, $10,000 worth of merchandise? Even $100,000, even $1 million worth of merchandise. They are stealing from our treasury billions and trillions of dollars. Not even close. Where's the outrage for this? It doesn't exist. Why? Because CNN doesn't talk about it. MSNBC doesn't talk about it. Fox doesn't talk about it. Hell, even the business stations don't talk about it. In fact, if and when the business stations talk about it, they praise it. Because this means the stock market's going up. They can juice asset prices. They don't care. It's all about winning. It's all about my stock portfolio going up at any expense. The expense is our country. The expense is the state of our union. Yet people aren't outraged by this. Market manipulation, one bank after the next. Money laundering, one bank after the next. Hundreds of $millions in fines, billions of dollars in fines, and some of them, no major news story. No cover-to-cover, wall-to-wall coverage, on any of these stations about what's going on. Nope, just keep the people distracted with the blue face clown or the red face clown. That's it. Coke or Pepsi, take your pick. That's all you got. Meanwhile, we're running away with all the money. The rats are abandoning ship. But first, they're running into the pantry before they jump onto the lifeboat, because they're getting as much food as they possibly can to live nice and comfy on that lifeboat. Meanwhile, we can just continue to argue, well, should there be abortion, no abortion, Second Amendment, put a judge here, justice, whether he's conservative, liberal. That's really going to solve it. Should I wear the mask? Should I not wear the mask? Good. That's the best we can focus on. That's it. And then you add into the mix all of the social media, which just compounds it and conflates it. Lie after lie after lie. Misinformation, disinformation. You would think in the era of information that we are in, this information era, it would be so much easier to discern fact from fiction, but it's quite the opposite, isn't it? People don't know. People don't know. They see it on Facebook, must be true. See it on Twitter, must be true. And that's another thing that could get pretty dicey here too with the president, Donald Trump. Regardless of whether he somehow pulls out the miraculous recount, which I don't think is going to happen, or he loses, and what he says after the fact, he can say, look at what they did. Facebook screwed us. Twitter screwed us. Instagram screwed us. One after the next. It'll just keep on coming. CNN, New York Times, Washington Post, all of it, down the line. They screwed us. You know what we have to do? Talking to his base, we got to boycott him. If you have a Twitter account, get off of it. You have a Facebook account, get off of it. You have an Instagram account, get off of it. You buy from Amazon because Jeff Bezos, of course, is the founder of Amazon and also the owner of the Washington Post. Get off of Amazon. Don't buy anything from Amazon. Get it from somewhere else. Those stocks have been holding up the stock market. So he wants to say, yeah, Joe Biden gets in. This is going to be a collapse. The stock market is going to tank if Joe Biden wins. Well, he can go in there and say, hey, get out of these tech stocks. Get off of Twitter. Get off of Facebook. Get off of Instagram. Of course, Facebook and Instagram both owned by Facebook. Get off of Twitter. Don't buy anything off of Amazon. Those stocks have been keeping the stock market up. You have tens of millions of Americans who are now no longer users of those sites, of those platforms. Huh. You know what kind of destruction that's going to do? I couldn't care less, believe me. I couldn't care less. But I'm just throwing out a hypothetical, something that could very easily happen. Because that's sort of the way this is going. I'm not a fan of social media. I can't stand it. I mean, how many podcasts have we done talking about social media? Either that was the primary subject of that day's discussion, or it's just sort of been interwoven with some of the discussion that we had on other podcasts. That documentary on Netflix, The Social Dilemma. Former tech executives, software engineers that built these platforms saying how dangerous they are. They don't let their kids use them. And that's all you need to know. And a lot of people know it, yet they still let their kids on it, or they're still obsessed with it and addicted to it too. It's extremely dangerous. That's the state of our union. That's how easy it is to distract people. That's how easy it is to misinform and disinform them. And not a word. Because people hear what they want to hear, and so they believe it. And so they're not going to be convinced otherwise. Well, of course it's rigged. And that's all there is. It doesn't matter what evidence I show you that says it wasn't. You think it's rigged? That's it. Clearly the evidence that you gave me, that must be fixed too. See how dangerous this is? It's extremely dangerous. This is what you would expect in a third world country. This is what you would actually expect in a banana republic. But guess what? This is a first world banana republic. This is completely out of hand. Right now. And again, we ain't seen nothing yet. What happens next? I mean, your guess is as good as mine. I mean, I threw a couple scenarios out there of what might be coming down the pike over the next couple months, over the next year, maybe over the next 4 years. Maybe over the next 4 years, if Donald Trump really wants to make a go at it in 2024, or groom one of his offspring to be the president, keep his base wound up, ready to go. Who knows? Who knows? This has been a crazy ride over the past several years. And again, Donald Trump is a symptom of this. He is not the disease. He is a symptom of the disease. And the symptom is problematic. This is not a pass for Donald Trump. He is problematic. But this is a symptom of a country, a state of the union that has been in decay and in decline for many years. And putting Joe Biden in there and Kamala Harris isn't going to solve a damn thing. Don't be naive. Don't be stupid. These structural problems have not even been addressed. They're not going to be addressed. It's going to be an attempt to kumbaya everybody, bring everybody together. Meanwhile, they're going to continue to rob the treasury. Your taxes are going to go up. We don't get to have a $4.3 trillion national deficit in 1 year alone and then get told that our taxes aren't going up. Don't be stupid. The states are bust. They don't have a printing press. They have state constitutions that mandate a balanced budget. So what's going to happen? Oh, they're going to raise their taxes to make up for the shortfalls. They're going to raise tolls. They're going to raise a consumption tax. They'll raise licensing fees, permits, whatever. They'll cut services, education, police, fire, anything that they offer. Pensions. How are they going to make up these shortfalls? Don't be stupid. And if they want to continue to make the argument that they can just print the money, or that the Congress, federal Congress, can just pass another bill. Of course, they don't have the money, so that means they're going to have to print it. If they can just do that without any negative consequences, then we don't have to pay taxes anymore. And this is not me being tongue-in-cheek. This is serious. Serious as a heart attack here. I've stated this many times before. If they think that they have solved this riddle, if they have discovered or created the free lunch, well, then what's good for the goose is good for the gander. You can print trillions of dollars with no negative consequences whatsoever. Then we don't have to pay taxes anymore. And furthermore, if it's good enough to do that, to print the money for the government to pay their bills, then it's good enough for them to print money to pay my bills and your bills. So if they want to continue doing this, and I will be seeing my congressman on this because I want an answer, and I know the idiot's not going to have one, But I want and I'm going to demand an answer from him on this and how far this is going to go. What's the limit? He's not going to know. You're not going to get this answer from a president, Trump, Biden. No. You're not going to get this from any idiot economic advisor. You're not going to get this from any idiot treasury secretary. You're not going to get this from any idiot central banker. They're not going to give you this answer. What's the limit? What's the limiting principle? How much further can this go on? And if it can go on forever and forever, then we're right back to my logic. Then I don't have to pay taxes and I don't have to pay my bills. Okay? So demand that answer from your congressman as well. And don't worry, I'll show you the way if I have to. I'll write another letter, post it on thecapitalnews.com, do a podcast about it. You can sign off on it as well. Take it to your congressman. We'll get to that juncture. We'll get there. Wait for these idiots to be sworn in January, and then we'll hit them hard. Because we deserve to have some answers on the structural issues facing this country. That's it. That's a half hour. I don't want to continue going over this, but that's the state of our union. It's a disaster. It's a disgrace. It's an embarrassment, and it's not going to get any better anytime soon. There are no adults in the room. It's all about money. It's all about power. It's all about politics. It's all about them preserving their institutions and their offices. It's not about this country. It's not about the betterment of this country. Those are political slogans to get you to vote for these idiots time and time again. Wake up. This country is in decline, and we can do something about it, and we can turn it around. This is not all doom and gloom. Understand this. Our best days can be ahead of us. But we can't live in denial, and we cannot bank on a Democrat or a Republican. These parties have got to go, but you have to wake up first. Stay diversified, stay vigilant, and stay with the Capital News. I am Alex Koritis. Godspeed.